So we have opened up the mics. There goes her little window. Thank you. And welcome to the Geek on My Sleeve channel, where we do weekly book reviews, summary recaps, and live book discussions every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, which you are tuning in for now. And we will be doing Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky is the second book in the series. First book is Children of Time. This is number 25, the big 2-5 for our Geek Outs. And we brought back Natasha for she did the very first original one with us and several throughout. And yeah, here we are today. How's everybody doing?
Good, 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 good.
Also
How,
good.
how far we've come. I think Children of Time was episode 2 of
Wow.
the Geek Out sessions. And here we are, episode 25 for Children of Ruin, book 2. How times have changed or haven't? I don't know. We'll get into that. So here we go. Yeah, so Children of Ruin, we've talked a lot about this. Tasha was nice enough to do the spoiler free of this book, and we talked about it a little bit. Would love to hear more of your guys' thoughts, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've pretty much decided that Children of Ruin is very much a duplicate or a clone of the first book, but on steroids and just kind of takes it up a level, right?
I think that's an accurate assessment.
Which is kind of weird because for me, the book doesn't follow a lot of the traditionals. Like, there's no main character that you can fall in love with. It's more the interstellar species travel and the virus, the uplift virus that we've infected things with, and that we hope will allow them to be sentient enough to communicate with us. So it's a lot more
Yes.
of the what if sci-fi.
Yeah, it's very much it's not super character driven, right? It's very much like world driven, fall in love with the space and the fandom. Um, and then it just takes place over such a large scale. It's literally thousands of years from start to finish in both books, right?
Yeah. For me, the time hopping part was like it kept me on my toes enough that I couldn't catch on to one part for too long because then it shifted and I had to be willing to let it go and move on. And then,
Yes,
15 chapters later, you come back and you're like, oh, those people, they're still there.
yes, yes. And then the in and out of sleep or whatnot with the different characters from the original terraforming crew. That kind of messes a bit with the perspective. And then I'm trying to think. I think in Children of Time, it stays relatively linear, right?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I read the
Yeah.
first one, but yeah, we start off and then we're constantly moving forward. Where
Mhm.
this one, I want to say we go back and forth maybe like 3, 4 times, which it makes sense a bit. Like when we're dealing with like the octopus's perspective, where we get a bit more of their history there. Um, but it's a challenge. It really was a challenge to follow
Yeah.
and get everything in the first 2, 3 reads.
And my best
I only gave it 2, so.
my best analogy for anyone who's struggling with it, if you've ever played those games where, example, you've got 5 chests and they put like a star in one of them and then they mix them up and then you've got to pick the correct chest at the end. the trick to doing those is not to like hyper focus on the star. It's just to kind of like relax your gaze and to kind of glance at all of them. And so instead of like tracking the movement specifically, you're just loosely looking at it and you just notice the transitions. And that's kind of how I read this book. And for me, I'm very ADD in my day to day life. So it made a bit more sense to me where it's like, okay, we're going along and now we've met these new people. Oh, wait, you don't know their origin. So we're going to back up. We're going to give you an origin story or a catch up, and then we're going to continue. But wait, we're not continuing in the same vein. So yeah, just very absorb the information until you get a connecting point. And honestly, it was a little weird. I was using a Bluetooth receiver that was a super cheap one. And for some reason, when the mic first opens up or when the audio first opens up, it doesn't catch all of it. So I never heard any of the like past whatever, present whatever. I never got any of that. So I think that also helped me because then
Oh,
I didn't have like a direct link to it. I wasn't thinking like, where does that fit? I was just absorbing the
okay.
what is going on, and then I was able to be like, okay, this is the octopus, or okay, this is Kern, or okay, this is the terraforming project.
It's funny because I missed it entirely the first time around until about halfway through the book. I was like, wait, didn't I already hear number 4? Like, what's
Right.
happening? And then the second time around, I paid more attention. Like, okay, this makes more sense. And then it gave me a little bit of a signpost, but I don't think it really helped me.
Yeah.
I think it would have been easier if it was like octopus section 1, octopus section 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's pretty much like 6 to 8 different stories all strung together to give us this larger story, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in a lot of ways, it does a lot of what it did well in Children of Time and Children of Ruin, and then it added some additional elements, right? One of the new things for us in Children of Ruin was for the first time they discover actual alien life. And I'm trying to remember, I think the captain, was it Baltiel, talked about how, you know, with the old empire, they used to include kind of like details of what to do if you came across intelligent life, and then they had done it so much that they didn't come across any aliens that they just stopped including it. Um, so there was that, which was kind of interesting, where we get the we. Um, I don't think did we ever figure out if they officially had a name or it was like the we um, blob
I call them
something,
the jellies, but I don't think they,
the
because
jellies.
no, that was a big thing where they didn't have a name. Because I remember Kern going and speaking back to um oh, words escape me, the human spider people after the other spider and human got captured by the octopi, and they were like,
Hmm.
can we just forget the name, call them whatever. And he was like, here's my plan, I need to tell you before I lose my processing power or get overtaken or this, that, and the other.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So since Pete is super awesome with names, we have Captain Baltiel from the original terraforming, and was it Sinkavi, which is our octopus deity. And then there's a handful of other minor characters, but the two spider human teams are Meshner and Fabian. The male spider human team, human with a capital H, and then Helena and Portia, who end up going and having first contact with the octopuses. Um, so there are those. Um,
That's
yeah,
something
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
I enjoyed from the first book. So in the first book, it's not, Portia isn't Portia. Portia is the genetic diversity of that evolution, or, Portia is a
Hmm.
very outgoing or whatever, and Fabian in the first one was the male scientist who more or less overthrew one of the side trees that then went and counteracted the main tree. I forget the name of it,
Hmm.
and so it still stands true for the nature of the mutation of the uplift virus. So that was kind of exciting. But then it completely
Hmm.
breaks it with the octopi because they're so ADD, emotionally ADD, that they just can't ever stick in one vein. And then it's weird too. So there's no like linear progression because of their nature, and it's also got a separation between mind and second mind, where their mind says, hey, execute, program, whatever to achieve my goals, and their limbs just kind of flail about and do their own thing. So that was an interesting disconnect. Yeah.
I like how Adrian, the author, kind of dealt with that because so much of this book, and I really want to get into it, is comes down to like the interspecies communication and just the differences there. But when he goes through and he talks about the species and whatnot with the spiders and with the octopuses, he kind of ties that back for us quote unquote humans, where he's like, "Hey, we're using this name as an identifier because the spiders, they don't think in the ways that we do in regards to like sounds as far as verbal communication, right? They think in the ways of how they he describe it, um, pretty much like spiders, right? As far as like the vibrations and um, the palp movements or whatnot. And the same thing with the octopuses. They think in the ways of like colors and other stuff. So their identifiers don't make sense for us. Um, but with the octopuses, he does follow like Paul because he named, Paul's 1 through 3 back on Earth,
Okay.
and then Paul's 4 through
Okay. I
whatever.
guess there was that
Um,
for the errant curiosity trait that came through.
hmm hmm Yeah.
There was one scene I specifically remember. I forget who, but one of the characters was trying to communicate to one of the octopi or a collection of octopi, and they didn't know how to do it. And so they were just like, I think it was one of the spiders, and they were just throwing out all kinds of things, and then they were watching for the reaction. They're like, no, I didn't mean that. Let me try something else. And it's just like this
Yeah.
trial and error and like adjusting more like the tempo of the communication, I think, more than
hmm
anything. And that's what the octopus was, or octopus, whatever, however many of them there were, what they were
Right.
catching on to. And then the response, like the feedback to the spider, was the color, is to whether or not they got the right message across. And it
Yeah.
wasn't even that either one understood. It was just like, this is good, this is bad, this is a threat, this is not, like very basic primal communication. And even that was still hard and required
hmm
both parties to not attack and
Right.
kind of listen and decide what to
So
do.
another cool thing about that scene, so due to the original Sin Kanbi, how do you pronounce that?
Oh, the
Yeah,
guy in Kabi.
Kanbi.
Yeah,
Anyway, due to him
it's a name.
being frustrated with trying to communicate with the octopuses, he had, his fits of fancy or whatnot where he would, get upset. And then while they're traveling and trying to communicate with, I believe, Helena and Portia, the translators, she has another fit of like, why can't I make a breakthrough? And that's where the
Yeah.
revolution of, oh, I've seen that before. Okay, let me try to bring it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. And communication was such a big part of this book, and it was something I really enjoyed. But they kept coming back to those different concepts that um, they struggled to relate and connect with. But one of the things that I think it was Helena talked about was there are certain emotions that are perhaps universal in a way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe not universal, but they can at least relate it. Maybe not necessarily like happiness, but success are similar enough. Same thing with like fear or danger, and using those as the building blocks. And we were the storyline really relied on the fact that eh, the I think the humans and the spiders, they're at like 2 or 3 generations in of cohabitation. So they have two teams of linguists really working to try to help each other with the communication between spiders and humans. And so they're already more open-minded to this as they interact with the octopuses, right? And to break out the baby face snap, can
Yeah,
Pete?
John was asking for it.
Oh yeah, that's
I
awesome.
think
You look so freaking
think
young.
last time, yeah, I wasn't sure how much of an effect. I think it looked a little better on you for the dynamics. But yeah, so there's a lot of different factions going on, and it just okay. So we've got the human spiders who have been infected with the original upload for the spiders, and the capital H humans for
Hmm.
a adaptation of the upload virus because the spiders still wanted to be dominant, so to speak, and they only wanted to give them enough that way
Hmm.
they could communicate. We saw that end of book one, and then now we've got the octopus or octopi who have been infected with it, but I don't know if they got the full version of it or if they got a adaptation of it.
I think they got limited.
Yeah, because he
Um,
wanted to
like,
incite certain traits.
hmm but I don't think it was as extreme as the original one. And something that I'm just now kind of piecing together is originally in the first book, they were hoping for the uplift virus to kind of get the monkeys there in a couple of
Yeah.
generations, right? But the arachnids literally had hundreds and hundreds of years for it to grow and evolve and mutate for them to get to where they are. And it's very similar to the octopuses, right? Because timeline wise, um, both terraforming projects for both books were around the same time. So the octopuses, in a way, have had just as much time as the spiders to get uplifted to this. Trying to remember what all the virus is supposed to do for them. It's kind of supposed to give a sense of like community, um, and just
Well, that was another weird thing because when we got introduced to, sorry, the jellies or the everyone, let's go on a adventure people. When we got introduced to them, I thought it was a mutation of the uplift virus. Like I thought, they initially sent
oh,
out a
I could
probe
see that.
and that's what it was because that's the vibe it gave me. But as we find out, it's not. It is its own adaptation mutation that developed on this
Hmm.
planet, which brings me to
Hmm.
believe, is there another species who did go that direction and instead of having a Kern probe god lord overseer, they ended up just shooting it off in a bunch of different directions, high noon Texas shoot 'em up style, and just wanted to see where it landed or if it was just a
Yeah.
natural adaptation mutation. Um, yeah. So, and then I was a little disappointed that Kern was the coup de grace or was the savior of us all again. Sorry, jumping around here,
Uh,
but Kern,
yeah, you're bouncing all over the place, buddy.
well, we read the same
Um,
book. It does that.
yeah, that's
That's true.
true.
It does.
Yeah, that makes sense then. If you're sticking in the vein of this book, it is all over the place. Question for you guys, one that I was thinking about. The original terraforming group gets divided into two parties, and I'd be curious to hear which one you guys would be more interested in participating in. There is the original mission of terraforming, which Sinkovi ends up going and doing, um, and then adds in the additional octopus project. And then there's Captain Baltiel, who chooses to study Nod and kind of catalog the first um, quote alien life. Would you guys be more interested in like building something and terraforming, and the audience can chime in as well, or kind of documenting and being the first to, first contact?
I would kind of break that into the third one, which we didn't get to see. Oh, Tiger Lady, when they're like,
Such like you, Pete.
"Oh, I've got these octopuses, what would you breed or whatnot?" And she's like, "I want a tiger." And that was the same lady who was like, "Oh, you want to do octopuses? Well, I want humans to be adapted and to have gills." And we never get to see this adaptation come to life because the guy who got stabbed by the urchin thingies ends up talking about it a little bit. He says she wants to do this, but it always stays as a what if because no one wants to take care of these kids, likes to theorize and likes to develop the concept, but doesn't want the responsibility of caring for these kids
Mm-hmm.
as they grow and as they
Mm-hmm.
develop. I mean, how are you supposed to discipline a child when they can just go hide in the ocean? You know,
Uh, you would go and pick a third option, and make fish people.
I'm honestly
Okay.
leaning more towards wings, but I guess fish is a good start.
A
How
flying fish. I hear it's a life life goal for some.
Yeah.
So.
There you go. There you go. How about you, Tasha? Would you go make flying fish?
Ooh, no, I would not make flying fish. I really don't like fish, so definitely not flying fish. um, I would probably characterize what's already been developed. Mostly because as a scientist, I'm of the opinion that you got to know what you have before you go try to make another iteration. And so while I understand the purpose of these explorers of like dividing and conquering because you only have so many lifespans and you're already like learning how to add on lifespans onto lifespans. um, I think there's a lot of value in understanding what it is that you have.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah.
What would you pick?
Uh it's a tough one. I think if I knew the track that Sokovia was going to go with the octopuses, I would be more interested in going that route. Though, if not, if just from the original get go in the meeting, the way they have it, I'd probably be more interested in documenting the new life, like first contact, exploring and documenting all that stuff. So,
One thing, it's a little off topic but related, that I thought
hmm
was pretty interesting. There was a scene that sticks out in my memory of, I forget which character, but they were basically giving a download to a bunch of other characters that had come out of sleep or something.
hmm
And there was so much to catch them up on. And he was like, he had like this slideshow or something, and he had spent all this time and he was excited to watch their reactions to the discoveries and the findings because they had been asleep this whole time. And he's like, wait, that's not the exciting part yet. And then it kept going. It's like, and that's not the exciting part yet. And like just
Uh,
imagining like what it would be like to be on both sides of that, right? The discoverer and not being able to share it because everybody's asleep and you can't wake them up. Or
hmm
on the receiving side, being like, I slept through all of this. And you
right.
can't do any, like if you had a question or something, it was 100, 2, 3, 4, 500 years ago. Like you can't do anything about it other than just, okay, that's what the team chose to do. What else you got?
Yeah. We saw a bit of the challenges there in the first book with our main character, and I'm drawing a blank on it, but I it'd be a real challenge just to have your lifespan broken up so much between, years, decades, et cetera,
Mhm.
going in and out of coming back, and it's like, okay, it's not just 8 hours overnight. It's could be 8 months, 8 years, um, 80
You
years.
know, at times I
Uh,
feel that really happens though, because in my line of work, it's
uh,
so monotonous and repetitive. I somehow missed 9 months, and my baby's
uh,
already 9 months old, and I'm like, wait a minute, is it
mm,
really? Yeah. So
is it really? Kids age you. Um, yeah, gotta live in the moment. We can't just go into cryo sleep.
Mm,
Um, but
not
yeah,
advised.
what uh, what were some big things that you guys really enjoyed from the second book? Um, Something new, something different. Um, One of the things that I kind of found fun, besides all the inner workings with communication, is just kind of the concept of this sea-based civilization dealing with space travel and the different physics to how they had everything set up, um, and just kind of like how that changed their space travel and how it worked, right? Because they were pretty much full of water, so they couldn't speed up or slow down as quick because of all the additional mass, right? Just imagine how much heavier um, those spaceships would be, that it's literally has to be packed full of water,
well,
right?
that, but it also gave them a sense of being impervious because if they were struck by something, it just passed through, and the gel-like liner for the outside just patched it, and they lost a little bit of water in their space combat, unless you got a, I guess, nuclear core center, the person hit. So it was, because
Are you getting them mixed up? Because I remember the spiders had that like web-like
or
thing, and
maybe they're
that's
similar, but it was one of the flashbacks after Kern's envoy comes out and they're first being attacked by the octopi, and the octopies are
okay.
fighting each other. Then there's a flashback and it talks about how when they're fighting each other, because I remember, because it was weird, the octopi decided to use their beam on like full blast and shot out like a
hmm
giant plasma laser instead of like a little pulse. And it talked about how if
Okay.
it hits the structure of the ship, it just goes through and they lose like a liter of water or some, smaller measurement of water when they get
Okay.
hit, unless they hit the operator in the middle. Anyway,
Okay.
I don't know, it was unique there. The biggest thing that kind of caught my interest was the implant, because we've
That
got
was pretty
several
cool.
different means of translation, and we get to see it with our Helena and Portia combo, and how Helena has figured out a glove that receives vibration, strand stuff, and translates it for her. And then,
hmm
we get that moment where, due to Helena having to adjust her translation software to the octopi, and Portia's like, oh, I don't have mine set for human. You're subservient to me. I'm really the master race now, and you get to see that guilt. But yeah, and then which brings me full circle ADD to the implants and how that was the uh Mesner and Fabian combo, the male combo, and how he
Hmm.
literally has something implanted into his brain to receive these neurological impulses, and Kern backdoors into it, and through that whole mess of iteration, we now have a second AI or a second upload paradox where Kern jumps into it to get her emotions, but then she kicks him out into the ant and then, ends up running around with the we are everybody, we are nothing gelatinous whatchamacallits. So yeah.
I I want Tasha to have an opportunity to answer, but before I lose my train of thought, when I was going back and re-listening to this again right before the stream, something that came to mind that I thought was really interesting was how Kern pretty much led the crew to go and explore the we, the blob, the jelly, as Peter refers to it as, because I think it was Meshna was talking about how Kern was used to being unique and how, while that's special, and especially Kern being so self-important, she might appreciate that. She was looking for someone else like her. Um, and by doing so, she kind of created something like her through Meshna, right, with the implant.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought that was really interesting. What she sought out, she indirectly kind of created um, through her own aid, through her own selfishness, through just those pieces there. But yeah. So Tasha, what were some of the interesting pieces that you enjoyed about the second book?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you jumped into that because that's a great segue to the part that I found to be really interesting towards the end, where it still boiled down to those human emotions and human wants. Because I remember from the first book, Kern was very much like not human in a way, right? Like she still has all these
Hmm.
people around and was very different and very like, oh, what's the word? Calculating, I guess is a nice way to put it.
Yes.
Um, and seemed more like robot and maybe well suited for this crazy adventure that unfolds over the course of the two books. But in the end, she's still wanting those human emotions and still practically creating them, creating a
Hmm.
situation where they can emerge, and then getting really excited when she feels them, but then also really sad because it means she's repeated the cycle again. Which I'm just
Yes.
imagining for somebody who was not really emotional and more detached as like many generations prior as an actual human, how weird that would feel to be like drawn to having those emotions but
Hmm.
also not at the same time. Like that must be such a weird internal conflict that she can't even feel because she's so far from being a human anymore. But yet these like natural human tendencies are still emerging, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I was talking a bit about it with Pete as we were getting prepared for this, kind of along the lines with Kern. It's pretty common, or at least not unheard of, to have like these AIs that grow and develop and kind of become like sentient living beings. Um, but at the end of the day, most of the time, they're just like electronic hardware. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Peter brought up the point. What'd you say about
Or
synapses
so
or
you said they're written off because it's just electronic impulses. And I said that's exactly what we are. We are synapses firing and electronic impulses inside meatware or our brain.
hmm. Yeah, but for her in this example, in book one, she's human. She kind of creates a backup of herself that ends up becoming herself, or what we think of as Kern. And it's all in that probe, right? Yet here, in a way, she's not necessarily like meatware, but she's essentially an ant
Yeah.
colony, right? So in her own way, she is still a living, breathing organism. So she's not necessarily human, but she's still very much alive in her own right. And I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I would be curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, do you think that at the end of the day, she is alive, or is she just a machine, or AI intelligence, like they refer to her as? Yeah. What do you guys think?
So there's. Oh,
It's
go ahead.
it strikes me like she's more like a ghost of a person. Like I wouldn't classify her as any of the things that you listed there, Carl.
Yeah.
Just I don't know. There's some like core of a human that it doesn't really fit into those other categories, which are things that she's clearly still displaying after all of these iterations and having gone through so many different things in different ways. And
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I see that. What are your thoughts, Pete?
So that actually leads into what I was gonna say. We can only get broken toys to play with. Um, Kern, when she was picked up, was a fractured backup, and then she was also being backed up as she was being exploded. So we didn't get all of it. And then in the instance where she finally decides to jump into the implant, she has already been partially destroyed. So her ant brain knows that she's missing parts and they're trying to rebuild it because, since kind of like your DNA, it holds all the information that it knows how to recreate it. But since it's not been recreated because the cells or the ant is doing something else, it now she's able to kind of bypass her narrative and decide to go into the implant. And same thing with the human who she turns into a secondary upload. That human wasn't fully in there because the implant can't even hold all of Kern, let alone all of this other human. And so, since it happens kind of simultaneously as he's dying and his body's being taken over by the jelly what's-a-jigger, we only end up with broken, impartial things, which brings me to a third point of Kern herself has created drones or probes or whatever that are herself, but they're also programmed or
Hmm.
trained not to re-interact with her. So she doesn't have that paradoxical here I am, yet I am there and whatnot, and which gives her the coup de grace of finishing off the jelly whatchamawiggers and explaining how she has seen it all. She has been the almighty. She will provide and be the ship, and yet she will not. So, because she transports several different, she's running inside this implant of her own brain away from the jelly, and then she finally comes to terms with it and shows the jelly that, hey, you want it all? You're going to destroy what you love in the pursuit of your happiness of going on an adventure. So we only end up with broken things. In breaking things, we have successfully avoided everything being broken into the epilogue of the book, which is the jellies trying to assimilate all knowledge from all different sources, and they get to go on their adventure.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because it reminds me of some scenes from the first book where they left Earth because it was more or less breaking,
Yeah.
right? Because and yet so in some parallels, the people who were on the original ship, who are then the ancestors of all the people in this book, were also pieces and broken things.
Because that's all they knew.
So the whole time, we still just have broken pieces.
Which reminds me
Yeah.
of in the first book, when Kern tells them to shove off and they go to the other planet. And what is that other planet? It is a giant jelly. It is a giant jelly that has consumed, and it's like malleable, and
I didn't make that connection.
I didn't until she mentioned it. So, oh
It was
my.
that fungus that pretty much consumed everything.
Yeah, the whole planet.
There. Could that be book 3? Could we have jellies up against the bad jellies?
Only if I get to
I don't
see
know.
the scientist dude, because the scientist guy the translator from book 1 I was the main character, and I
Oh.
didn't know it until he made it to land, and I was so disappointed that I didn't get to stop and smell the roses at all. Like, we literally made it to the planet. We now are one, not really, but one with the spiders, and they have a brief little excerpt of, oh, some people have a phobia or arachnophobia, and they're afraid of spiders, so they don't like spiders. Big whoop. I don't care. Show me something about it.
I think we got a little bit about him though, because Helena talks about her grandfather.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's where she comes
And I
through.
think so we get to hear a little bit about him, and it doesn't come out and say it by name, but it refers to how like the last couple of years of his life, how he was like the oldest human who came off of the ship, with the exception of what would be her grandmother, but her grandfather really struggled with going like in and out of
We're losing you.
character talks about, am I cutting in and out?
Yeah, you're getting super robot-y.
Okay. All with things on my end. You pick up with the next piece.
Oh, well, I don't recall that, but I guess it makes sense that, yeah, we get to see a little iteration of it, and that's one of the things from book 1 to 2. We get to see Portia and Fabian and the traits and the uplift reiteration throughout all of them, which is kind of cool. And I guess we get to see a little bit of that with Paul and how Sin can be. I'm just going to call him Sasuke in my head, because that's what I've been calling him, because he's like a core of the group, but then he goes off on his own path. And then when we come back to him, he's a lot stronger. And yet we feel like we're Naruto and we're still as good as everybody else. And through Shinkabi Sasuke messing up royally and going with Orochimaru or the octopi, he ends up messing up, and the octopi or Orochimaru marks him and gets out and starts interacting with everything else, and then he has to shut down. Well, in shutting down, he ends up saving his terraforming crew / killing part of them. I thought it was funny how there was 13, but we didn't mention them. Well, surprise, surprise, they die. Anyway, so Sasuke / Orochimaru end up saving their terraforming project due to his slip up, of which, allows Helena and Portia to see more of his research and to make the connection, of which then Kern can assimilate it all and free the jellies from wanting to eat everyone and everything, to becoming a good little adventurous servant.
It wouldn't be a Geek Out stream if we didn't get our anime references in. So there you go, everybody. You're welcome. Not everybody will be able to follow said anime references, but I hear we wear our geek on our sleeve. Yeah. So there you go. Good times, good times.
So I have have to ask Pete, how many times have you read or listened to this book? Because you clearly remember like 5 times as much detail as I do.
Well, so I only got through this book once, sadly enough, but I did it
What?
all in one sitting, and I did it while multitasking, and it was the point. My job is very mindless and monotonous, so I literally went into autopilot with my work, and then I just went on autopilot of paying attention yet not paying attention to the book. And it really, as weird as it is, like it made a lot of sense to me because through my anime days and the long-winded ones, they do a lot of, oh, look at this epic fighter. And now that you know him and you love him, let's go and talk about an origin story. And let's talk about um, how brain fart, how Sensei, oh, not iPad says a different anime. Anyway, how the copycat ninja became the copycat ninja, and it goes and it does an origin story for him. So it's probably more of my nature of ooh shiny and being distracted that it made more sense. But yeah, I can't do names, and this book doesn't really rely a lot on names.
And what speed were you listening to the book at, Pete?
It was 2 times so that I could fit it within the day of my work day. But I mean
Good old.
that's more like learning anything else. Like typically you get a foundation of it and you listen to it at one speed, and then when you first accelerate or you go to a next speed, it takes a bit of getting used to. But then after you listen to it at that speed, if you go back to the slower speed, you're like, why are there snails wiggling through the air? And why can I not, you know, I want it, say it, just do it. In certain iterations, it doesn't work out super well. For example, there's certain sounders that a couple books do that don't quite sound as musically well. And there are other
Or when
ones,
they have music in there.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
The land is amazing, but that's not what we're here about.
No, that's next
Yep,
week, right?
that is next
The
week.
land. So, yeah. Yeah. Wow, you usually listen to the books a couple times before we do these
I
Geek Out
normally
streams.
do, and I think what helped is I ended up editing your guys's where you were like, this is so hard to follow that I just took the whole like, okay, I'm not going to follow I'm going to absently follow, if that makes sense.
Just, kind of get in that trance-like state and just absorb all the information
Yeah,
through your
yeah.
2x speed.
I wasn't
That
so
like
concerned on where journey before destination radiance. So I was very much
Uh,
on my journey.
Name that reference in the
Oh,
comments
yeah.
below. Sorry, continue.
So I was very journey before destination there where I just yeah.
Yeah,
They're all
yeah.
new
Well,
players, so we had to have an origin story.
I am so glad that our spoiler-free review brought you value,
Yeah.
Pete. That's why we're here, to provide value for the community and ourselves indirectly. So, anyway, Children of Ruin. We kind of got off track. What else do you guys have? I have a couple thoughts and questions for you, but um, what you guys got?
Oh, I say fire away, Carl.
Yeah.
Fire away. Okay. So, Children of Time for me, really well done. Children of Ruin for me, in the right mindset, and I think we discussed this a little bit as we were getting ready. You really have to be in the mindset for a good, hard science fiction book, for Children of Ruin. If or when there comes a third book, um, which direction do you guys think it will go? and if it continues to progress this way, like I'm inclined to pick books up just because I'm invested in the series. But if it adds more layers, I'm almost of the mind like, no, thank you, for a
Yeah.
third book. And I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, I love it when books try new things, and I feel like this kind of tried some newer things. But for me, it was almost too much. So, Tasha, what are your thoughts?
For me, it was definitely too much.
Yeah.
So I read it twice. The first time through, my conclusion was this is exactly the same as the first book. Why? I must have missed something. But given how good the first book was, I was like, okay, let me break my rule and I'm gonna give it a second listen. So I did, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I did because I caught a lot more. But I don't know. There's just like too much happening, and I don't even think it's necessarily too much happening. It's maybe the way it was presented or something. Like it just
Okay.
in the same way like Pete was able to grab it all. I'm still like, where are these strings? I'm certain there are pieces that I'm still missing. And that's
Hmm.
after 2 listens. And that's like I don't like to have to work that hard for a book.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely have to be in the right mindset for this book. Um, but not everybody can binge it like Pete did, right?
Yeah.
Like there it has to be connected enough and there enough for you to put it down and pick it back up and not be like, oh my goodness, where is my spreadsheets and my notes on
Yeah.
what the heck is going on here?
I guess
Pete, your
that's very
thoughts?
true. It's very much a one sitting book, which is not plausible for a lot of people. My thoughts. So the Mist Wraith is the end of book 2. Okay, so able to eat their body, assume their form is the end of book 2. I enjoy it because it's something new on the apocalypse. Like we've all seen the zombies, we've all seen the end of the world as we know it, Stone Age as getting back on our feet. And it's the Stone Age where we've nuked ourselves to, the end of existence, and yet we've made it out, and yet it's not really us at all in the upload alternate thing. And I I don't know, it's a new concept, but I miss so much from every other book in my life where we don't have a main character, I have no character development, I have no morals and values and direction of it. People who I wanted to die, like Kern, didn't die. They're being reiterated in AI slash ant forms and spreading and seeding the world. Um, and like it kind of makes me think of that time I got reincarnated as a slime, another anime reference, and
Uh,
how they're able to absorb powers and become its own thing. And it kind of makes me think of the Mist Wraith, which is in Mistborn, another great book, Brandon Sanderson, and how they're able to absorb and become it after that. And then there was another one, but I've lost it. I just can't remember it. So I enjoy it on the take of Apocalypse, but it never stops enough for me. Like I understand it's continuing the theme and people who enjoy, I guess, the animal evolution or creature evolution and space travel. And I think what I also wanted to mention, Bobiverse does really well chronologically stringing everything along. That book you can set down,
mm-hmm,
you can pick up, makes a lot more sense.
mm-hmm.
This book, it was a little more ADD and all over the place, which spoke to me on a different level, but
I was about to say maybe that's why you were able to follow it so much better than the rest of us.
at the same time, I didn't get a lot of sustenance where I needed that sustenance. Like my combat level was almost non-existent. Like, okay, we got stabbed by an
What are
urchin.
you talking about? Octopuses are fighting all the time.
Yeah,
That's how they
but
communicate,
that
right? Or not the octopuses, the tentacles.
yeah, the secondary brain of their yeah, and that was like a thing, but there was no reasoning behind it. There was, but there wasn't.
Okay.
I agree with you, Pete, because I was spent so much time trying to figure out what was going on and connecting the pieces that I missed if there was actual substance to like stop and enjoy. I missed it
Mm.
because I was just like I
Yeah.
don't know where to put it in the story in my brain.
Yeah. I didn't there
I
wasn't a whole lot of substance for stuff.
As we're kind of talking through this, and since they did add all the additional layers to this book, I almost feel like uh, it it was a short version of a larger book, right? Like they
Mhm.
could have really used some filler or some extra details in there for these different sections that maybe would have helped tie it all together. Not that I'm saying we wanted a longer book, because I think this one is longer than
It
Children
is.
of Time, but it takes place over such a large scale that yeah, like
Oh,
there it just feel like there were pieces
that's
missing.
where I almost feel book 1 did better cuz like book 1 when we got to be in the nitty-gritty of the spiders. We got to see them
Hmm.
develop and come to being as a civilization, and a lot of the instances we were seeing made me think, "Oh, well this is like Genghis Khan," or "Oh, this is like Napoleon, or oh, this is like some other iteration of what humans have done to conquer, so to speak. And then we
Hmm.
really got to see Fabian and we got to see his ingenuity and how, due to his programming of the ants, he uh, set a back door to get in and to rehack and reinitiate all these other things. But it took it on a bi or molecular biology esque words escape me level instead of, and that's what was exciting from the first book. We took our mechanical instance and we put it organic. And so much through my other books like Bobaverse, where there are world destroying, aging, alien raging, rampaging what's its for now, mole people who are destroying these planets, and we're like, oh, they've got no metals, they're screwed. And I'm like, oh, Children of Time, this. Let's bring it to a biological scale and let's have them uplift with ants as their computers. There was a lot of cool science
Oh yeah.
fiction things that I could see introduced to other books and other themes that was exciting, but I still just like book 1 had a lot more I care about who you are sustenance, where book 2 was, oh, well, it's over. We're all going to be eaten by the jellies. Just kidding. Kern comes out of the back and saves us all. Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if the second book is laying more groundwork for a third book that will give some of that sustenance and tie it all together and give us some characters to invest in.
I could certainly see that. And the way book two leaves off, it sets us up for a third book. Um,
Yeah.
I'm open to it, but at the same time, like book one wrapped up really well to where they could have just stopped right there. Book two, kind of the same. Um, but it sets us up where they're going out and exploring, right? And that's where I'm a bit anxious about continuing the series because if they go on that additional scale up, Oh my goodness. Like it's just
Too
going to be so hard to
much.
follow. Yeah, too much.
I
He's going to
It almost becomes a video game at that point where you need your little character to be like, okay, I'm gonna go explore this. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna go explore this and come back.
yes.
yeah, we never turn in
Yes.
any of our quests.
Yeah, yeah. Or break it up into maybe some different books, or different sections. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Certainly will be interesting.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind where I got the book, I enjoy it for what it is, but I feel it's going to go in the same vein. It's definitely not a Brandon Sanderson, and then the penny drops, and we are actually, God or we created our God that we are looking for, which was a paradox of the God of which was already in being, kind of situation.
Yes, but we are covering Brandon Sanderson not next week, but the following week of Mistborn.
Or
Um,
actually,
but yeah,
or sorry, continue.
yeah,
I'm
no.
looking for stuff.
Oh, okay, okay. Um, Kind of on that note, I know it's been a crazy week slash weekend for all of us on the stream. Wrapping it up, kind of some final thoughts on book 2 of the Children of Time series. What do you got, Pete?
Wrapping things up, Children of Time series at Children of Ruin. Kind of where we were. I'm excited that the uplift has made it out, but it's kind of like burning the 10th metal and being able to see the opponent's moves before they happen, but then they burn the 10th metal, and now you're able to both see each other's moves. So instead of pulling off
Uh,
that matrix dodge that you thought you were going to get away with, it turns out that you haven't met this character, so we're going to do an origin story. Um, yeah, that's how I feel.
Pete, your geek is on a whole other level, brother. Uh, Tasha, what final thoughts on Children of Ruin slash Children of Time series?
Very different way that I'm gonna explain it. Um, so like we said, the first book and the second book are very similar in some ways, but also very different. And it leaves me wondering whether I want to invest the time in a third book, which is kind of sad because I don't I don't like not finishing things. I don't like assuming before I know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those situations where I'm happy that you do the spoiler-free reviews because then I can find out beforehand if it's something that I want to go pick up and invest the time to read or not.
Oh, and that's a big thing with books. Like, we don't have a lot that we don't continue, but for me, the first book should have a hook that grabs me and makes me want to invest my time. Like, I'm getting some form of sustenance. If you make it to book 2 and it's not grabbed you where you're enwrapped in the world and the character development and the progression where you're like, I need to know more. Why did this narrator just say tune in next time to see if Goku will defeat Frieza? Like, if you're not at that level, it's not really worth it.
And then
Yeah, I'm far from that
Yeah.
level at this point.
yeah, yeah. And then they tease you and drag it on for another,
Oh,
20
yeah, I'm just
episodes.
powering up.
Um, I'm I'm right there with you, Tasha. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the series. When book 3 comes out, I'll probably continue it. But with where I'm at, and depending on what other books are on my TBR, it won't be an instant pickup for me. There are a lot of series when a new book drops, I put all my other to be read books on hold and I have to consume it. This is not going to be Book 3 is not going to be like that for me. I'll probably pick it up just because I'm curious and interested to see where the series and the world goes. But I'm definitely going to have to be in the right mindset for it and perhaps pull a Pete and just 2-3x my way through it in one sitting if possible.
Well, you'll have to let me know, Carl, if it's one of those situations. Like for me, I use music references, not so much anime references. So if it's one of those situations where it's a great album and then a bad album, and then is it another bad album and it's going to be 10 years before it's good again? Or is it just a fluke and one bad album and now they're good again and they're going to stay good, you know?
Well, that's a whole
Yep.
separate
Yep.
iteration for me because everyone's like, they're not the same. This isn't the author, artist I love. And it's like, dude, that was 10 years ago when they launched that. They're creating a new sound. If you like their old stuff, play their old stuff. If you don't like their new stuff, well, there's a lot of stuff out there, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
it's all about
enjoy,
the
yeah,
evolution,
the
right?
creative
It's this
freedom
one.
of making something.
No,
Hey,
there was definitely some creative freedoms taken, and I appreciate the exploration. But
yes.
I don't think I need to read
Yeah.
another of this.
There's so many good books out there.
True.
So many good books out there too. And my to be read list is always growing and we're always looking for more suggestions. So feel free to throw them our way. Um, with that being said,
Oh, yeah,
Pete, what is
oh,
go
I
ahead.
got some buttons here. So Emma Yang, sorry if I butchered the name. This is what I was messing with. You probably saw it popping around. This is our June TBR. So we just got done with Children of Ruin. We're going to The Land by Alarong Kong, and then Mistborn, Brandon Sanderson, and then A Mark of Kings. Oh, I think it's Bryce O'Connor and Luke Chimolenko. Um, yeah, that's where we're going. We we have over 450 books in our arsenal, and that's why we got into this passion project. We have a lot of times that we're accepting insight from others and we would like to do more. We haven't quite dialed in our Discord channel. We will be doing polls and it varies. You know, it's all about flavor and mood. Last month, we did a lot of suggested material. I was not a big fan of any of the assassin tropes we ran into. So, to keep myself afloat, I needed to do stuff for me, and for me, the land. Oh my bejesus. Please, for the love of all that is left good in this world, pick up the land in audio format and just absorb it. It's a lit RPG, which stands for living in the RPG. So living in the role
That's what it
playing game.
stands for,
Yeah, that's
Peter.
not
That's
official.
what it stands for, Peter.
I'm
It's actually literature role playing
oh
game, but the Peter definition of lit RPG is living in the role playing game.
So
Um,
it is amazing if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy epic battles, you enjoy witty puns, if you enjoy the book's amazing. So that one's for me. And then Mistborn is one that got me into reading. Like Brandon Sanderson is so phenomenal in all of his works. Amazing author.
yes,
Mistborn got me
yes.
into wanting to read more. Like this book throughout the whole series, you know, kept me invested, kept me involved, kept me loving the characters. And this is why I can't do traditional assassin tropes because you go through and they've got a game plan, they're out for the greater good, they've got great character morals and values, and then they're infiltrating a stronghold, and then they use their allomantic powers and they just start.
No spoilers. No
Ah,
spoilers.
it's good.
Watch the spoiler free review.
You
Soon to
said
come out.
enough. I'm sold.
So this month is passion projects for us. After I get my fill, we will be hopefully getting our Discord channel together. Should be a link in the description below where we will be taking polls. Not sure if we're gonna do like an open poll, like, hey, suggest something, because we are only 1 to 2 to 3 people at a time, and yeah, there's only so
Yeah.
many hours in a day and weeks in a year. But yeah, we might do a,
Yeah.
hey, here's things we're thinking of. Here's things that have been recommended. Help us narrow it down. Yep.
Yep. And with that being said, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Natasha, for joining in on this Geek Out number 25. We appreciate you. We appreciate our audience for showing up and geeking out with us. And yeah, same time, same place next week. The Land by Alaron Kong.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.